good morning. It's end of the year list time, even though it's actually not the end of the year. It's mid-November. Put my Christmas trees up because I don't care. Every year, me and a couple of my mates, we do our best games of the year, not necessarily best games of the year. So, for example, last year, 2018, my list had on it Red Dead 2, Spider-Man PS4, fine, but it also had Sonic CD and the Terminator CD and Dreamweb for the Amiga. What I do is, it's the best games of that year that I've either discovered and played through and really loved, didn't know anything about, so on and so forth. So what I thought I'd do this year, as soon as I get pretty good at editing, I thought I might just edit them together and slap them together. So there's going to be 2 minutes on each game, and when I discovered it, how I discovered it, why I liked it, and there's everything on there. There's PS4, Xbox One, there's Amiga, there's Mega Drive, the lot. So yeah, here's a list of the, or at least my, favourite 20 games that I discovered in 2019. Before I get started, just want to point out that all of the footage that you see in this video I've captured from various machines that I have. I've captured it from my PS4, my Xbox One, the PlayStation Legacy, the MegaPive, which is the Mega Drive Raspberry Pi that I just built, and also the Wylde Pi, which is my Amiga / multi console Raspberry Pi that I built a while ago. All the videos for them are in the description down the bottom. Okay, so starting with my number 20, I used to have the first disc of, or at least it said disc 1, of Cool Spot on the Amiga, but the game was so hard that I never actually got past, I think it was like the first 3 levels. So when I built the MegaPive, Cool Spot was on there, and I was like, you know what, I really liked Cool Spot on the Amiga, maybe I'll try it. So I sat down one night to play it, and I actually played all the way through it in one go, from beginning to end. And I really enjoyed it. It's one of those games that I always remember like playing on the Amiga but being terrible at. But it's really good fun. Now there are some questionable jumping sections, like this first section from the first level. I mean, this is the first level. But overly, it's really, really good and a nice surprise. I didn't actually think I'd enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, now this one took me really by surprise. What I do is when I build my Raspberry Pis, I use RetroPie, and RetroPie's got this fantastic function where if you press one button, it will select a system at random, and then it will select a game at random. This is one of the games that it brought up, and it's for the Game Boy Color, and it is a point-and-click adventure for the Game Boy Color. Now, Scooby-Doo, believe it or not, had multiple point-and-click adventures, but for some reason, on consoles, that heavily mimicked LucasArts point-and-click adventures, but on the Game Boy Color. And it had these cutscenes at the beginning. It had a full intro, animated intro, and it's really well done. The UI is very similar to something like Full Throttle, if you've played that, or Grim Fandango. So you'll go to next to something, it will say what it is in the bottom left, and then you tell it, you know, you have 3 options come up, either talk, look, or touch, or interact. But, I mean, it is a point-and-click adventure, a full point-and-click adventure, with twists, turns, and multiple characters to select. You can go through the whole of Mystery Inc. when they're not, you know, spoilers, captured. And it's fully functional on the Game Boy Color. That's the thing that I'm trying to, like, wrap my head around. There was a game that I played last year called Perfect Dark. Again, it was a game on the Game Boy Color that had no right being as good or as, you know, impressive as it was. It not only had speech, but the speech was so clear that you could hear the Scottish accent of the speech on the Game Boy Color. This is another one of those games. If you ever see this game or download this game or you've got this game, play it. It's really, really impressive for what it is. A point-and-click adventure on the Game Boy Color. Okay, this one, I wasn't expecting anything at all. I am a massive Turrican snob. with my obvious preference being for Turrican 2 on the Amiga. The soundtrack, the gameplay, the exploration, the bosses, everything about that game, I don't think it could be made any better. So the SNES version wasn't really interested, but again, it was another one of those games that just press the random button, see what happens. Press the random button, this came up, and I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough, I'll play it. What I didn't realise is that this is basically a remake of Turrican 2 for the Super Nintendo, and it's really good. Now, it's not one for one, so the levels aren't the same, the level layouts aren't the same, the bosses aren't the same, and obviously it's missing quite a bit. But overly, they've managed to compress most of the theme of the Amiga game and the themes of the Amiga game on this cartridge, and it's super impressive and it's fun to play. I genuinely didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. I didn't like the Mega Drive version, so Mega Turrican, which is basically Turrican 3 on the Amiga. Not a fan. I mean, I'm not a fan of Turrican 1 either, and there's ports of that everywhere. Like, Game Boy's got a port, Atari Lynx, everything's got a port of that. But this, I was pleasantly surprised by, and it's the first, other than that Game Boy Advance version of Turrican, like the homebrew Turrican that I reviewed last year, I think. Other than that, this is the first console port of Turrican that I've genuinely enjoyed, and I'm probably going to play Super Turrican 2 afterwards. Again, took me completely by surprise, absolutely love this one. Okay, this one, I don't know what I was expecting, but I saw a screenshot and thought, you know what, I have to play that. This is on the SEGA MegaPive, which is the Sega Mega Drive Raspberry Pi that I just built, which has got every Master System, every 32X, every Mega Drive, every Sega CD, every SG-1000, every Game Gear game, all on one machine. And I got all the screenshots, box art, saw the screenshot for this and thought, that looks like Terminator CD. I love Terminator CD. That game is amazing, and this looks just like it. Put it in, and to be honest, at the beginning, wasn't impressed. I liked the video, which then bleeds straight into the game. So what you're seeing is exactly how it is. So the video ends, game starts, and it's scene for scene. Wasn't that impressed with the graphics, if I'm honest. The Terminator graphics, or the Terminator CD graphics, are a lot better. This is somewhere in between Terminator CD and RoboCop vs Terminator, if you've played that. Very, very, very similar. The one thing I will say is that it does follow the movie pretty close and is true to the name. A lot of stuff blows up in this game. Like, there are explosions every 2 seconds. The other thing it does as well is at some points it will go to a top-down game. So you'll see Sly from above, and he's running around like it's when he goes to the museum to chase Phoenix, and there are some other top-down bits as well. And that kind of plays like True Lies or the Chaos Engine, but mostly like True Lies. If you play True Lies, you'll know what I mean. But if not, it plays a lot like the Chaos Engine. Not as good. But yeah, overly, I finished all of these games. So I played it to the end, and I genuinely enjoyed this. Very, very good. Okay, this one I bought on the PlayStation 4, even though it's a PS2 game. It's Parappa The Rapper 2. Now, Parappa The Rapper 1, I am a massive fan of. Like, to the point where I know most of the lyrics to most of the songs, and I don't know the complete lyrics to any song ever, even of my favourite bands. Parappa The Rapper is amazing, and it's a PS1 classic. Parappa The Rapper 2 I never played. Not once, because I thought it will never be as good as number 1, so what's the point? Never even gave it a second thought. This is back in the day, back in 2001. So it was on sale on the PS4 store for like £2, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. It's not going to be great. But I've had a lot of good luck with the PS2 remakes for PS4, so I've played, Psychonauts and, most of the Rockstar stuff. So I thought, well, the ports are good, so I'll try it. Put it in, and my god, is this a better game? It is so much better than Parappa The Rapper 1. The music is better. The gameplay is better. The animation is better. But, you know, getting back to it, the music is better. Right? All of the music in Parappa 2 is better than the music in Parappa 1, believe it or not. We're starting with, like, the burger song. And not only that, the final music and the final boss battle was written and performed by De La Soul. So it's got proper rap credibility in there, like 90s rap credibility, which is literally my thing. This is where I shine. So obviously I downloaded the Parappa The Rapper 2 soundtrack and play it in the car. And my kids love it. My wife not so much, but my kids love it. It is a solid game. Download it now. It's on the PS4. It's like a couple of quid. You should get it. It's awesome. Okay, Tanglewood. Now, I've already made a video on this. This is a 2018 game built on Mega Drive Dev Console, or Mega Drive Dev Unit. So there's a gentleman by the name of Matt Phillips. Now Matt Phillips has got, you know, programming chops from the PS4, the PS3, like he knows what he's doing. And for, you know, reasons known to him, because it's a passion project, he ended up in possession of a Mega Drive Dev Console and made Tanglewood. I've been following this game for a while, and when it was released I was like, yep, getting a copy of that. So I got a copy, and it comes with the Mega Drive binary file, which you can run on any emulator. This game is incredible. Not only does it look great, it sounds amazing. It's got a soundtrack very, very close to Fez, like Disaster Piece's Fez soundtrack. The game itself is a bit like Pugsy or those puzzle platformers that you used to get back in the 90s. So it's, even though it looks like Sonic, it doesn't play like Sonic. It's very much a puzzle platformer. Think Pugsy, Lost Vikings, stuff like that. The one thing I will say is that he has made full use of color palette. He's made full use of parallax scrolling. It's just a joy to look at. Not only was it made by one guy, but it's also fun. Like, it's genuinely fun. There's no dialogue, there's nothing in the way, but there's a story, and the story has a twist at the end, which I genuinely couldn't see coming from a 16-bit Mega Drive game with no dialogue. Genuinely a fantastic game. It's up on Steam, and it comes with a binary file. Get it. Okay, Dredd vs. Death. I'm going to be honest, I picked this one up in CEX for a $5 because it was just there, and I'm like, oh, I used to like Judge Dredd when I was 13. Especially the dark judges. And I remember reading the graphic novel of, you know, Anderson's, you know, fight against the dark judges with Dredd. And I saw this and I thought, it's a $5, I'll give it a shot. This might be my biggest surprise of the year. Not only is it good and fun to play, it is full of content. There is so much in this game to do. You have a full campaign mode, which is up to 4-player split screen. You can play it 1 to 4 player, and it is full. You start here, quashing a riot. One of your buttons is the Halt Free Citizen button, which when you press it, it tells the bad guys to, you know, get on their knees and stop what they're doing. So you can just press that to anyone. And then when you're done, there's an arrest button, so you can arrest them. If they give you any trouble, shoot them. And the story obviously then goes on to vampires and zombies and the dark judges and monsters and whatnot. But you start out doing Judge Dredd stuff. Like, here's a graffiti artist. I tell him to stop what he's doing, throw his hands in the air, and he legs it. Well, I'm not having that, so I'll put a bullet in his leg. And then I'll tell him to stop again. And if he doesn't, I'm going to shoot him again. It is and here's the thing. Graffitiing is one thing, but then you can arrest people for anything. So you can arrest people for loitering, smoking, owning a hamster, being poor. You can arrest someone for being poor. This is the most Tory game you have ever experienced. You can also set them on fire while they're in handcuffs, but don't, because, you know, they've already been judged. So towards the end of the game, you go to Hell, essentially, or the Hell Void, and fight the Dark Judges, including all of the Dark Judges, all 4 of them. So there's a lot of enemy variety, but here's the thing, the campaign is only one section of the game. There are also mini scenarios which you unlock, and those mini scenarios, like this, is Block War, where you play as a member of Blue Block fighting against a member of Red Block. So you're not even a judge at this point. Then, while you're fighting Red Block, the judges turn up. If you shoot a judge, he drops his Lawgiver. If you pick up the Lawgiver, it explodes in your hand. Look, I'm going to try and use the Lawgiver. First of all, you have to select it, and bang, it explodes in your hand. It's a little attention to detail like that that really shows they know how to make a Judge Dredd game. Plus, you've got 4-player deathmatch. It's amazing. Buy that game. Okay, Sniper Elite 4 is, again, another massive surprise. It was part of PS Plus. I have never played a Sniper Elite game. I like the Hitman games, but I really like Contracts, like the kind of janky ones. Sniper Elite 4, I thought was very stoic, very serious. Little did I know until I played it how very not that it is. So when you start out, the game tells you, right, you've got to hold your breath, and you've got to pick your target, and then you've got to empty your lungs, and then you've got to get a headshot, make sure you hit the commanding officers, and so on and so forth. And you do, and it looks great. Like, the game is beautiful. And also, here's me emptying my lung, and I put it on this officer's head. I'm going to pull the trigger. You get a very slow-mo effect of the bullet flying through the air, entering the eye socket, knocking off his hat. That's how you're supposed to play the game. I very quickly learned that once you get a silencer, and once you get silenced bullets, you can have a ton of fun in this game. This game is meant for mucking about. So here I am shooting a truck. The truck explodes. Right next to this guy that's standing next to explosive barrels. He then gets blown to smithereens. His mate comes over and goes, "Oh, that truck just blew up." By which point, I'm emptying my lungs, and I'm about to put a bullet into his bum, which comes out through his testicles. This game is a game for being stupid. In and out. There you go. Lovely. Death by exploding testicle. This is a game that knows exactly what it is. You can do a serious war story, but that doesn't mean it can't be silly in certain points. Like, here's a guy. I could shoot him in the face. Or I could shoot this and squish him to death. The options are fantastic. It is just a game. It is a sandbox game just for mucking about, and I love it. Okay, here's another game that I never even... I mean, I'd heard about it back in the day, but only in printed word. I'd never actually seen it running. So, Digital Illusions Computer Entertainment, i.e. DICE, the same DICE that is now knocking out Battlefront, the Star Wars games, made a game called Benefactor. Now, again, it was one of those names that appears in Amiga magazines all the time, but never really paid much attention to. Benefactor is essentially Lemmings, but you play as a guy in the game trying to get the Lemmings home. So it's a platform game, but not a platformer. It's a Lemmings game, but not a Lemmings game. It's somewhere in the middle. It starts out very, very simple. So you pick up the Lemmings, and you throw them up, and they pull switches for you, and then you pull switches for them, and essentially you're trying to work as a team to get back home. The game is insanely difficult, and you can snooker yourself at any point. It does get devilishly difficult, like really, really difficult. Towards the end, you're setting up moves, 3 in advance. Like, you've got to know what's going to happen 3 moves before you pull the switch. There are some, platforms that only you can step on, some platforms that only they can step on. There are naughty lemmings. I wish I knew their names. I'm going to call them lemmings. There are naughty lemmings. There are nice lemmings. There are, bottomless pits. There's lava. There's, monsters in the game that will try and hurt them. There are you can turn them into builders. You can turn them into helpers, you can get them to hold keys, and then at the end of the game you end up in hell. It is a very weird, very good game. Definitely enjoyed Benefactor. Okay, backstory to the Xbox One. A solid friend of mine who said one day, I have an Xbox One, it's broken, it's been broken for ages, if you can fix it, it's yours. And I'm like, I don't know if I can fix it, but I'll give it a shot. So I popped that sucker open eventually, because it's a nightmare, and it needed a new ribbon cable, and it needed a couple of wires, and it needed a few solder joints re-soldering. Other than that, and it needed a new power supply. Other than that, it worked. So I've been steadily building up an Xbox One exclusive collection. So I've got things like Quantum Break and Rise and Sunset Overdrive and Gears and stuff like that. Quantum Break, I wasn't expecting to be this good. Like, when you look at the reviews and when it came out, everyone kind of slated it, and then I realised that people were kind of slating it for not being Uncharted or not being Infamous. Like, the game's good. It's just not great. It's a solid B tier game, but I really like the TV aspect. I really like the storyline. Quantum Break does things with time travel that nothing else does, including Back to the Future and all the other media that you see that deals with time travel. Everyone treats time like an element that can be molded and shaped and, you know, moved, whereas Quantum Break treats time like a concept, like theory, and that it not magic, but also not quantifiable. You can do things with time that are essentially magic, like magic powers, but it's interesting, and I've never seen it done before, and I think that it deserves way more. I think it deserves way more credit for that. Okay, yet another one that I just found by pressing a random button. Aliens Infestation. Now, Aliens Infestation is Metroid. Pure and simple. It's Metroid, but it's Metroid with an Aliens theme attached to it. The other thing that it is essentially a roguelike. So all of these soldiers you see here are real people in the world. You can find them and you can take them with you if you have space in your party. If one of your party members, i.e. the 4 people at the top, dies, that person's dead forever. Interestingly, they all have their own personalities and dialogue. So there are, I'm going to say, about 50 people in the game total, including NPCs, and they can all talk to each other, which all initiates their own lines of dialogue, which means that there's hundreds of lines of dialogue and somehow they all go together. Very interesting. The game itself is just Metroid. You go from here, you get a new power, you get a new key, you get a new ability, and then that opens up other parts of the map. Not Metroidvania, just Metroid. The map's huge. You're on the Sulaco. You have all the weapons. You have your pulse rifle, your grenade, your pistol, Hicks's shotgun. But interestingly, there's this little bonus game, which is Bishop's Knife game. And because it's on the DS, you click the spaces in between the fingers and try not to stab your own fingers. Little nice touch. Also, if you click down in the description is going to be a link to the credits song, which is one of the best songs I have ever heard in my life. Okay, Crash Team Racing for the PS4. I was a pretty big Crash Team Racing fan on the PS1. I think it's amazing. I think it's better than most Mario Karts, even today. Like, with the exception of like maybe 7 and 8, I think that Crash Team Racing 1 is still better than most Mario Karts. It's challenging, it's got brilliant balance, it's got an adventure mode, which is genuinely hard. The remake is that plus. So it's got the full adventure mode, it's got all the characters, it's got single races, it's got a roster of cars, it's got a roster of new characters, it's got all of the original levels, plus all the levels from Nitro Kart, which there's like a dozen, maybe 15 of them. Then they're adding new levels every couple of months. all themed, like they have a Spyro level, Spyro's in it, they have a Halloween level, a Christmas level, a Thanksgiving level, everything's in it, a dinosaur level. They've added new races, they've added new carts, new paint jobs. Yes, there are microtransactions, be aware, but if you're not particularly worried about that, the game is amazing. Like, definitely pick it up. And also, putting this game in my top 10 list gives me an opportunity to show this footage of when... This is how close races can get. Me and Andrew passed the line at exactly the same time, so much so that the computer couldn't decide who won, so gave us both first place. That is how tight some of these races go. It is a fantastic game. Get yourself a copy of Crash Team Racing for the PS4. It's incredible. Okay, this is one of my favourite games of all time. Back in 2017, I had not played a single Castlevania game in my life. Not one. And today, I've played pretty much all of them. I found Rondo of Blood last year, and I can safely say that of all of the games that are pre-Metroidvania, so from Castlevania 1, 2, 3, Bloodlines, Rondo of Blood, this is easily the best one. Now, the version I'm playing is the Japanese PC Engine version with the PSP English translation patched in. So it's the Japanese version of the game, but patched into English with the English translation from the PSP remake layered on top. It's fantastic. It's, like, again, pre-Metroidvania Castlevania, so classic Castlevania, but I don't like. I mean, other than Bloodlines, I really don't like the classic Castlevanias. I don't think they're that fun. I think they're too hard and most of the time incredibly unfair. This is different. This is multi-rooted, it's a lot fairer, it looks great, and has one of the single greatest soundtracks that you will ever hear. I still bang this out on my headphones going to work. It's fantastic. If you don't play the game, just download the soundtrack. Like, it's that good. Anyway, so unlike the other Castlevania games where it's completely linear, this has side paths, it has multiple characters. You can play as Richter, or you can play as Maria, who you have to find in a hidden area. There are other little paths you need to go down to. There are multiple bosses, because each new path brings a different boss. It's got massive replayability, and even if you stick to the same path, you're going to hear some amazing music. Great secrets, great animation, really good. PC Engine, TurboGrafx, Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Okay, now this game, I'm not going to spend too long banging on about it here, because I made an entire hour-long video on it. Disruptor for the PS1 is one of those games that I found completely by accident again, while making the PlayStation Legacy, and absolutely fell in love with. Now, the game itself is a Doom clone, but every level is different. Every level has new enemies pretty much to go into. They all look incredibly different. They all play, for the most part, incredibly different. You have these mind powers, so you have different weapons plus psi powers to kill the enemies with. But the hook, the one thing that kept me playing this game, is the fact that it's an early PS1 game with FMV cutscenes. Now, the FMV cutscenes are made in quite clearly a studio, quite clearly for very low budget, but they actually made an effort. It's not naff, it's just this amazing B-movie with a Doom clone attached that's genuinely fun. I love this game. Like I say, the link is up top and it's also down the bottom in the description if you want to see me bang on about this game for a solid hour and go through all of these cutscenes, because these cutscenes go completely bananas towards the end. But my god, what a fantastic game. If you ever, if you download this game or see this game, or you're out and you see a secondhand copy of this game, buy it. It's so much fun. Like, it's genuinely a good shooter. Plus, I mean, it's hard in spots, but it's genuinely a good shooter. Varied, but these cutscenes, my god. Oh, and also it's made by Insomniac Games, who, you know, just knocked out Spider-Man for the PS4. So there's that as well. Okay, so I have a massive confession to make with this game. I actually owned this game back in the day for the PS1, but I never played it. I had what's known as a black disc. So there are these promo discs that I've still got, you know, about half a dozen of to a dozen of when I worked in a game store. And a rep used to come round and hand out the full versions of the game, but just on a black disc. We had no box art, no instruction manual, nothing. So I had the Symphony of the Night black disc. Never played it. I may have started it about a dozen times and then got completely turned off by the RPG elements of it. It's just not me at the time. I then bought it for the PlayStation 3. Then I bought it for the PlayStation 1 again, so I have like 4 copies of it. Never played it. This year, I decided that, I actually quite like Castlevania games, because I love Aria of Sorrow. Played that last year. I love Harmony of Dissonance. You know what I mean? I love Rondo of Blood. I'll give Castlevania Symphony of the Night another go. And to be completely honest, I get it. I was wrong. I should have played it back in the day. I definitely should have played it earlier than I have. I love this game. Before this year, I had like played the first 10 minutes like multiple times. Now I have finished the game 3 times in a year. That is how much I love this game. The soundtrack again is on my MP3 player. I bang it out whenever I get a chance, go to work, whatever. The graphics are amazing. The bosses are huge. The sprite work is fantastic, and when you finish you get to play as Richter from Rondo of Blood. So you can't really argue with that, can you? It's a fantastic game. I was completely wrong not to play it. I wish I knew where my black disc was, because it's probably worth a bit now. Never mind. Okay, so this game goes by different names in different territories. If you're in Europe, the game is called Exhumed, and the box art is completely different. And if you're in the States, the game is called Powerslave, and the box art is completely different. I assume because of the Iron Maiden album. This game is what you get if you mix Doom, Metroid, Tomb Raider, and Stargate all together. You play as a modern-day adventurer exploring tombs, a la Tomb Raider. It is a first-person Doom clone with really solid controls. Like, this has got fantastic controls, right? And you travel everywhere by camel. Every world that you go to, and you can select which world you go to and which levels you want to go back to, a la Metroid, you pick up new powers. Those powers let you advance a little bit further in that world. The weapons that you pick up range from machine guns, pistols, all the way up to flamethrowers, magical bombs, a ring that shoots out magical powers. It's very, very, very good. But also, if you want to play a first-person Metroid game, this might be the very first one of those. I highly, highly recommend that you play Powerslave. It's solid controls, great weapons. The only problem is, and this is a big problem, some of the enemies are a complete nightmare to kill. The enemy scaling is insane. You meet these like leopard women and they just murder you all the time. Other than that, other than these inconsistent difficulty, this might be, I mean, it's one of my favourite games of the year. Okay, again, another complete random find. I hit random, this came up, I played it. I quite like Zelda games. Again, I didn't know this until last year. I like Link to the Past. I like Link Between Worlds. I like, what else do I like? I like, what was the other one? Oh, I can't remember. The other Zelda game. This is Zelda. This is Sony made a Zelda game. It's so unashamedly Zelda, it just doesn't care. I don't know why they don't like talk about this one as much as they do. It is a fantastic game. I think it's because they're worried about litigation. It has to be. you've got everything. You've got bombs, you've got spells. The one thing you have, which you don't have in a Zelda game, is a jump button and a run button. So as well as, you know, puzzles involving pushing switches and whatnot, timing based puzzles, you also have jumping and platforming. Now the platforming can be a little wonky, like sometimes you think you're next to something but the perspective actually means you're miles away, so you end up falling off a lot of stuff. But there's so much platforming in a Zelda game that actually works. Also, the bosses are huge, there's lots of them, you've got spells, you've got varying locations. I never actually thought I would enjoy this as much as I do. The one downside to this game is that all the bosses, without exception, every single one of the bosses is a massive damage sponge. Like, you can spend forever battering these guys and there's no feedback. You don't actually know if you're getting anywhere with them. Also, be aware the game is dark. Like, the game revolves around death, loss of faith. It's just, yeah, fantastic, but wow. Okay, my favourite Castlevania game of all time. If anyone tells you, if you ask anyone what their favourite Castlevania game is, or more importantly, what the best Castlevania game is, they will say, without doubt, one of two things: Castlevania 3 or Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That's because every game that came after Symphony of the Night was on a handheld. Aria of Sorrow is better, and Portrait of Ruin is absolutely better. Portrait of Ruin is one of, if not the best Castlevania game ever made. It is huge. It's essentially the Castlevania greatest hits. Okay, so technically it's a sequel to Bloodlines on the Genesis, but they've done a lot of interesting things. Firstly, you play as two characters at the same time, either together or one at a time. It's completely up to you at the press of a button. The Souls mode from Aria of Sorrow is gone, but in its place is a ridiculous number of weapons, a ridiculous number of upgrades, puzzles involving both Jonathan and Charlotte, the two main protagonists, or some where you have to be together. A bit like puzzle platforming, a bit like something like Tanglewood. The enemies themselves, I know Castlevania gets a lot of stick for being essentially like sprite recycling, and this has got a lot of sprite recycling, but in the best way. Like I say, this is essentially the greatest hits of Castlevania, so pretty much every boss is in this game ever in a Castlevania game. Dracula's castle is huge and varied, but to mix things up, there are these portraits, hence Portrait of Ruin, which Jonathan and Charlotte can jump into, which then take them to ancient Egypt, which then take them to, you know, to London, like Victorian London. You can also go to a haunted wood, so you vary the locations. The enemies are great, and like I say, the amount of enemies and different types of enemies. It's not just palette swap city. You actually have every enemy from what they're. It's like a victory lap. This game is a victory lap. If you've ever liked a Castlevania game, play this. Plus, when you finish, you can play as Richter. And because the game is a co-op game, not only can you play as Richter, you can play as Richter and Maria from Rondo of Blood. So, together, or one at a time. So, I mean, this is the third game on my list where you can play as Richter Belmont, but whatever. The story is, you know, it's a Castlevania game, who cares about the story? When you finish, though, two of the antagonists in the story are available to play, so there's yet a third bonus. In fact, there are 4 bonus games, but this third bonus game, you play as 2 of the bad guys in a touchscreen only control method that actually works. Okay, number 2, Resident Evil 2. I can't speak highly enough about this game. Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation 1 is one of my favourite games of all time. It's definitely in the top, 3. It's fantastic. I love Resident Evil 2. I love the campiness of it. I love the bad dialogue. I like being chased around by the tyrant at the end. I like the B scenario. I like everything about it. If you told me that you could take one of my favourite games of all time and make them better, I would be more stunned than I was when you said that about Doom. Because you told me you could make Doom better, I wouldn't believe you. You told me you could make Resident Evil 2 better, wouldn't believe you. But my god, is this game amazing. It's genuinely terrifying. Don't get me wrong, it's hard. It's very, very hard. This game is not for newcomers, I don't think. Well, maybe it is. Maybe if you're like new to the genre, but there are certain things that you have to figure out in the game. Like, for example, don't shoot a zombie in the head. Shoot it in the legs. Its leg will fall off and then you can just run away from it. These things are designed to suck up bullets, even in the head. I'm not going to get into too much of the story. The footage you're seeing here is from like the first couple of minutes. You should play this game. I cannot stress, even if you are a newcomer, play this game. It is genuinely one of the most terrifying, grossest, thrilling, tense, confusing experiences of 2019. I cannot speak highly enough about this game. It goes in some weird directions, but then you knew that because it's got the words Resident Evil on the box. It takes a lot of inspiration from Resident Evil 7, but they haven't lost the core qualities of Resident Evil, hence limited ammo boxes, like ammo boxes, supply boxes, green herbs. It's all there, it all still works. It's still Resident Evil with an incredibly well done coat of paint over the top. Play this game. Alright, and my number one game of all time. Now, like I said, I am a newcomer to Castlevania. A newcomer. In 2017, hadn't played a single one. In 2019, played all of them. Multiple times. I love Castlevania games. Metroidvania Castlevania games. So not so much the first one, except for Rondo of Blood and Bloodlines. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is clearly from the guy who made Castlevania. It is a semi-sequel to Aria of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance. So instead of collecting souls, you collect shards. There are hundreds of shards. The shards give you new abilities. Some of those new abilities you need to progress. So, and the enemies drop them at random. So you can tell just on these shards here, and there are 5 different categories of shards, how many there are. There are multiple equipment types. There are multiple weapon types. We're talking swords, whips, guns. We're talking magic items. We're talking, you know, like you can have a directional fire button, which then a shard will spit out, you know, new things. We've got secrets, we've got crafting, we've got weapon crafting, we've got shard crafting, we've got food crafting, we've got what do you call it? Like in Order of Ecclesia, the side missions, like they used to get in the town, all of those are here. The map is absolutely huge, and the graphics, I mean, look at this here. This is a beautiful looking game with huge bosses, massive varied bosses, massive varied locations. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is the best Castlevania game ever made. Quite typically, while I was editing up this video, I completely forgot one. I also finished Link Between Worlds this year. Solid game, 8 out of 10. Probably make it onto next year's list.